Commander Zethkar pressed his scaled fingers against the smooth surface of his observation console and watched the small blue planet spin slowly below his cloaked vessel. 3 months had passed since he began studying the creatures that called themselves humans, and his initial assessment remained unchanged. They were primitive, disorganized, and utterly predictable in their military tactics. The alien commander's ship hung in the darkness beyond Earth's moon, invisible to the crude detection systems the humans used. His mission was simple: observe, catalog, and prepare a preliminary report for the Galactic Council about this new species they had discovered. Every few decades, the Council found another world with intelligent life, and they needed to know if the inhabitants were worth integrating into their vast civilization, or if they should be left alone to develop naturally. Zethkar had conducted 17 such studies in his long career. Most species fell into predictable categories. The highly advanced ones joined the Council as equals. The moderately developed ones became client species under Council protection. The primitive ones were quarantined until they reached sufficient technological development. Then there were the aggressive ones like the Kalreth, who had to be contained or eliminated before they could threaten peaceful worlds. Humans appeared to fit neatly into the moderate category. They had achieved basic spaceflight and nuclear technology, but their weapons were laughably primitive compared to galactic standards. Their military organization showed promise but lacked the discipline and coordination he had seen in more advanced species. Most telling of all, their individual soldiers seemed unable to follow even simple tactical procedures without constant supervision. Down on the planet's surface, Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched his squad move through their training exercise in the Nevada desert. The morning sun was already brutal, and they had 3 more hours of maneuvers ahead of them. Jake had been running these drills for 5 years, and he knew every mistake his soldiers would make before they made them. Corporal Lisa Hayes moved her fire team to the left flank, just as Jake expected. She was good at reading terrain, but she always took the safe route instead of the optimal one. Private First Class Danny Rodriguez provided covering fire from his position behind a cluster of rocks, but he was wasting ammunition on targets that were already neutralized. Specialist Kate Adams coordinated communications between the teams, but her radio chatter was unnecessarily verbose and would have given away their position to any real enemy. None of them knew that an alien observer was watching their every move, from the darkness of space, taking careful notes about human military capabilities. Zethkar's assessment was methodical and thorough. Human soldiers moved in predictable patterns. They favored direct assaults over subtle tactics. Their command structure was rigid and inflexible. When faced with unexpected situations, they relied on individual initiative rather than coordinated responses, which led to chaos and confusion on the battlefield. The alien commander had seen similar traits in dozens of species. The Velthani had been brave but tactically naive. The Gorvani had possessed advanced technology, but lacked the strategic thinking to use it effectively. The Myrthan had been individually skilled, but unable to coordinate large-scale operations. All of them had required extensive training and oversight before they could participate meaningfully in galactic defense forces. Humans would be no different. Their inclusion in the Galactic Council would require patience and careful management. They would need to be assigned to support roles rather than frontline combat positions. Their natural aggression could be useful if properly channeled, but their lack of tactical sophistication made them unsuitable for independent operations. Jake Morrison called for a water break and gathered his squad around him for a brief tactical review. Each soldier listened attentively as he pointed out their mistakes and suggested improvements. Lisa needed to take more calculated risks. Danny needed to conserve ammunition and pick his targets more carefully. Kate needed to keep her communications brief and focused. They all nodded and agreed to do better in the next exercise. From his distant observation post, Zethkar noted the human tendency toward self-correction and improvement. This was encouraging. Many species were too proud or too rigid to acknowledge their mistakes. Humans seemed willing to learn, which would make their integration into galactic society much easier. The Council's military advisors would appreciate working with a species that accepted guidance and criticism. The alien commander made another note in his report about human adaptability. They showed promise in this area, though their learning curve was slow compared to more advanced species. Given enough time and proper instruction, they might eventually develop into competent support troops for galactic defense operations. Jake's squad spent the rest of the morning running through increasingly complex scenarios. They practiced urban warfare, desert operations, and mountain combat. Each exercise revealed new weaknesses in their tactical approach. They were too loud during stealth operations. They bunched up too much during advances. They took too long to respond to changing battlefield conditions, but they kept trying. Every failure was followed by discussion, analysis, and another attempt. Jake noticed small improvements in each iteration, though progress was frustratingly slow. Military training was about building habits through repetition, and good habits took time to develop. Zethkar observed these training exercises with professional detachment. The humans were clearly trying to improve their military capabilities, but their methods were inefficient. Advanced species use neural conditioning and tactical implants to accelerate the learning process. Humans relied on primitive repetition and verbal instruction, which explained their slow development. As the Earth's day cycle ended and Jake's squad returned to their base, Zethkar began composing his preliminary report. The humans were a category, 3 species, moderately intelligent, technologically developing, and militarily trainable, but requiring significant oversight. They would make acceptable junior partners in the Galactic Council once their tactical deficiencies were addressed through proper training programs. The alien commander had no way of knowing that he was observing training exercises rather than actual combat. He had never seen humans fight for their lives, their families, or their world. He had never witnessed what happened when human soldiers were pushed beyond their limits and forced to improvise, adapt, and overcome impossible odds. His report would reflect his observations of humans at practice, not humans at war. It was a distinction that would prove crucial in the months to come, when the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable of when everything they cared about was at stake. The first Calreth ships appeared in Earth's outer solar system on a Tuesday morning, detected by deep space monitoring stations as unusual gravitational anomalies near Jupiter's orbit. Dr. Amanda Foster was drinking her 3rd cup of coffee when the readings appeared on her screen at the Arecibo Observatory. The signals made no sense according to known physics, but the computers were insistent about their reality. Within 6 hours, the anomalies had moved closer to Earth than should have been possible for any known object. The gravitational signatures were massive, suggesting ships the size of small moons, but visual confirmation remained impossible. Whatever was approaching Earth possessed technology that bent light around it, making direct observation nearly useless. Admiral Helen Cross received the first official briefing at the Pentagon while most of America was still eating lunch. The 53-year-old naval officer had commanded 3 carrier groups and served in 2 major conflicts. But nothing in her experience had prepared her for reports of invisible ships larger than aircraft carriers moving through space at impossible speeds toward Earth. The Calreth had spent centuries perfecting their invasion techniques. Their bioships were grown rather than built, living vessels that could adapt to different environments and repair themselves during combat. Each ship housed thousands of warriors, bred specifically for conquest, along with weapon systems that could level cities from orbit. They had consumed 12 worlds in the past 100 years, and their expansion into the Sol system was simply the next logical step in their empire's growth. Commander Zethkar watched the Calreth fleet's approach with growing unease from his hidden observation post. The Reptilian Empire was known throughout the galaxy for their efficiency in planetary conquest. They typically completed invasions within days, overwhelming local defenses with superior technology and coordinated assault tactics. The humans would face an enemy that had refined warfare into a precise science. The alien observer had been preparing to submit his final report about human military capabilities when the Calreth ships appeared. Now he would have an opportunity to observe humans in actual combat rather than training exercises. His scientific curiosity was tempered by the knowledge that he would likely be witnessing the end of human civilization. On Earth, military leaders struggled to comprehend the scale of the threat approaching their world. Satellite imagery showed nothing, but gravitational sensors indicated the presence of objects massive enough to affect tidal patterns. Radio telescopes detected strange biological signatures mixed with technological emissions. Most disturbing of all, attempts to communicate with the approaching vessels received only silence in response. Major Ben Foster was conducting a routine inspection of his battalion's equipment at Fort Bragg when the base's alarm systems activated. The 34-year-old Army officer had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq, but the emergency briefing he received that afternoon challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. His unit was being mobilized to defend against an alien invasion, a scenario that existed only in science fiction until now. The Calreth ships revealed themselves as they entered Earth's atmosphere, their cloaking systems no longer necessary once they began their assault. The vessels were nightmarish combinations of organic curves and metallic edges, like massive insects constructed from living metal. They moved with predatory grace through the sky, their weapons systems charging with energy that made the air itself shimmer with heat. New York City was the first target. The lead Calreth ship positioned itself above Manhattan and began systematically destroying military installations with beams of coherent energy that turned concrete and steel into vapor. The city's air defenses responded immediately, launching missiles and firing anti-aircraft weapons at the invading vessel, but conventional explosives had no effect on the alien ship's biometallic hull. Admiral Cross coordinated the global defense effort from her command center in the orbital station Liberty 1, watching helplessly as similar attacks began simultaneously across every major population center on Earth. The Calreth were following their standard invasion protocol: disable military infrastructure first, then demand surrender from the remaining civilian population. Human military forces responded exactly as Zethkar had predicted based on his months of observation. Army units rushed to defend major cities without coordinated planning. Air Force squadrons attacked targets they could not effectively damage with weapons that proved inadequate. Naval vessels fired missiles at alien ships that absorbed the explosions, without apparent harm. Major Foster led his battalion through the streets of Charlotte as Calreth ground forces began deploying from their orbital ships. The alien soldiers were 7 feet tall with natural armor plating and weapons that fired projectiles of pure energy. They moved in perfect formation, communicating through methods that human intelligence could not intercept or understand. The first engagements between human and Calreth forces followed predictable patterns. Human soldiers took cover behind vehicles and buildings, while alien warriors advanced with mechanical precision. Conventional bullets bounced harmlessly off Calreth armor, while their energy weapons cut through human protective gear like paper. Within hours, major cities were under occupation, and human casualties mounted rapidly. Captain Alex Turner found himself leading the defense of a Chicago neighborhood with what remained of his Marine company. Half his unit had been killed or wounded in the first day of fighting, and their ammunition was running dangerously low. The Calreth seemed unstoppable, advancing methodically through the city while human forces fell back from one defensive position to another. But something unexpected was beginning to happen in the chaos of urban combat. Individual human soldiers were starting to notice patterns in Calreth behavior. Sergeant Nina Walsh observed that the aliens always paused for exactly 3 seconds before firing their energy weapons. Corporal Chris Lopez realized that Calreth communications were vulnerable to interference when they operated in confined spaces. Private Danny Kim discovered that the aliens had difficulty adapting to rapid changes in elevation during building-to-building combat. These observations were isolated incidents, barely noticed amid the larger disaster unfolding across the planet. Most human military leaders were focused on immediate survival rather than tactical analysis. The overwhelming technological superiority of the Calreth forces made detailed study seem pointless when the outcome of the invasion appeared inevitable. Zethkar documented the early stages of the conflict with professional interest, noting how closely human responses matched his predictions. Their forces were brave but disorganized, aggressive but ineffective against superior technology. The Calreth were methodically dismantling Earth's defenses according to their established protocols, and human resistance was weakening with each passing hour. By the end of the first week, The Calreth controlled most major population centers, and human governments were preparing to negotiate surrender terms. The invaders had demonstrated their technological superiority decisively, and continued resistance seemed futile. Military analysts calculated that organized human forces would collapse completely within days. But in the ruins of occupied cities, small groups of human survivors were beginning to learn things about their enemies that would change everything. They were discovering that the Calreth's greatest strength, their rigid adherence to proven tactics, might also be their greatest weakness when facing an enemy that refused to fight according to established rules. The real war was about to begin, and neither the Calreth nor their alien observer understood what humans were capable of when they stopped fighting like soldiers and started fighting like humans. Captain Alex Turner crouched in the rubble of what had once been a Chicago department store, listening to the rhythmic footsteps of a Calreth patrol moving through the street outside. 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began, and his Marine company had been reduced to 12 survivors hiding in the ruins of the occupied city, but those 12 had learned more about fighting aliens than any military academy could have taught them. The Calreth moved in groups of 6, always maintaining the same formation regardless of terrain. Turner had counted their steps and timed their movements until he could predict their patrol routes with mathematical precision. The aliens were creatures of habit, following protocols that had worked on 12 other worlds. They had no reason to change tactics that had never failed them before. Dr. Nina Walsh pressed herself against the broken concrete wall beside Turner, her medical bag containing supplies she had scavenged from abandoned hospitals and pharmacies. The battlefield surgeon had treated more alien wounds than human ones in recent days, studying Calreth physiology with the intense focus of someone whose survival depended on understanding her enemy. She had dissected dead alien soldiers in bombed-out basements, mapping their anatomy by flashlight while artillery fire echoed overhead. The Calreth exoskeleton was nearly impervious to conventional weapons, but Walsh had discovered hairline fractures that appeared when the armor was subjected to specific types of stress. The alien's respiratory system required a particular mixture of gases that could be disrupted under certain conditions. Most importantly, their nervous system relied on electrical impulses that followed predictable patterns, making them vulnerable to interference if you knew where to strike. Technical Sergeant Chris Lopez worked quietly in the corner of their makeshift shelter, surrounded by pieces of captured Calreth equipment that he had been reverse engineering with nothing but basic tools and desperate creativity. The communications specialist had already figured out how to jam certain frequencies in the alien command network, and he was close to cracking their targeting systems. Every piece of alien technology told him something new about how their weapons functioned. The Calreth had made a crucial error in their invasion strategy. They assumed that primitive species would either surrender quickly or fight with conventional tactics until they were overwhelmed. They had never encountered an enemy that treated warfare as a learning experience, studying every engagement to improve performance in the next battle. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Brooks had been officially declared dead 4 times in the past 2 weeks, but he kept appearing in impossible places with valuable intelligence about Calreth operations. His reconnaissance unit had become specialists in what they called educational suicide missions, operations that succeeded precisely because they seemed too dangerous for any rational military force to attempt. Brooks had learned that Calreth ships followed strict schedules for maintenance and crew rotation. Their ground forces reported to orbital command at regular intervals using communication protocols that could be monitored and analyzed. Most importantly, the aliens had contingency plans for every type of resistance they had encountered before, but no protocols for dealing with enemies that changed tactics faster than their command structure could adapt. Sergeant Amy Parker led a squad that had transformed the urban environment into a weapon against the occupying forces. They had studied how Calreth soldiers moved through buildings, noting that the aliens always cleared rooms in the same systematic pattern. Parker's team had learned to turn every structure into a maze of traps and ambushes, using the aliens' predictability against them. The breakthrough came when Parker's squad successfully captured a Calreth command post in downtown Detroit. The operation had cost them 8 soldiers out of 12, but the intelligence they gathered revealed the entire alien fleet's operational structure. The Calreth organized their forces according to rigid hierarchies that could be disrupted if You knew which commanders to target. Commander Zethkar watched these developments with growing unease from his hidden observation post. The humans were not behaving according to any established patterns for conquered species. Instead of surrendering or mounting desperate last stands, they were systematically analyzing their enemies and adapting their tactics with each engagement. Every defeat taught them something new about Calreth vulnerabilities. The alien observer had studied 17 different species during his career, and none of them had demonstrated this capacity for rapid tactical evolution. Most conquered populations either collapsed under the weight of superior technology or fought bravely but ineffectively until they were completely overwhelmed. Humans seemed to treat each battle as a laboratory experiment, testing new theories about how to kill their enemies more efficiently. Captain Lucy Stone had been a logistics officer before the invasion, responsible for managing supply chains and equipment distribution. Now she led a strike team that specialized in capturing Calreth technology intact. Her unit had learned to disable alien weapons without destroying them, allowing human engineers to study advanced energy systems and biological components that were decades ahead of Earth's science. Stone's greatest success came when her team managed to capture an intact Calreth landing craft during a supply run outside Phoenix. The operation required sacrificing an entire platoon to create a diversion, but the intelligence gained from studying alien navigation and communication systems proved invaluable. Human forces suddenly had access to Calreth tactical frequencies and orbital positioning data. The captured alien technology revealed something unexpected about Calreth psychology. The reptilian species had evolved as apex predators on their homeworld, developing hunting instincts that made them supremely effective against prey that followed predictable behavior patterns. But their predatory nature also made them inflexible when faced with prey that refused to act like victims. Dr. Frank Williams had been a university professor, studying theoretical physics before the invasion forced him to become a practical engineer. Working in hidden laboratories scattered throughout the ruins of major cities, Williams led teams of scientists and engineers who were learning to weaponize human creativity against alien technology. They built improvised devices that disrupted Calreth electronics, created chemical compounds that degraded alien armor, and developed tactics that turned human weaknesses into strategic advantages. The Calreth had superior technology, but humans had something the aliens had never encountered before: the ability to innovate under pressure. Every human defeat generated new ideas about how to fight more effectively. Every casualty taught surviving soldiers something valuable about alien vulnerabilities. Every destroyed human position became a laboratory for testing new theories about unconventional warfare. Major Ben Foster coordinated resistance activities across the southeastern United States from a hidden command center in the Appalachian Mountains. His network of scattered units had learned to communicate using methods the Calreth could not intercept, coordinate attacks that appeared random but followed sophisticated patterns, and share intelligence about alien weaknesses faster than the enemy could adapt their defenses. Foster's greatest insight was recognizing that humans did not need to match Calreth technology to defeat them. They simply needed to force the aliens to fight a type of war they were not designed to win. The Calreth were supremely effective at conventional warfare, but they had no experience dealing with enemies that changed the rules of engagement every day. As the fourth week of occupation began, Zethkar realized that his initial assessment of human military capabilities had been completely wrong. The species he had classified as moderately intelligent and militarily trainable was demonstrating a capacity for tactical innovation that surpassed anything in his experience. They were not just fighting the Calreth, they were learning to think like them and then thinking beyond them. The humans had turned their apparent disadvantages into strategic assets. Their lack of advanced technology forced them to be creative. Their flexible command structure allowed them to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Most importantly, their individual initiative gave them the ability to improvise solutions that no centralized planning system could have anticipated. For the first time in his long career, Zethkar found himself wondering which species would ultimately prevail in this conflict. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Brooks had been declared dead so many times that his own command structure had stopped keeping track. The 42-year-old officer seemed to specialize in impossible missions that should have killed him, but instead provided crucial intelligence about Calreth operations. His latest report from inside enemy territory would change the entire course of the war. Brooks had spent 3 days observing a major Calreth command center in the ruins of Dallas, noting patterns that revealed a critical weakness in alien fleet: coordination. The reptilian species relied on hierarchical communication systems that became vulnerable when individual command nodes were eliminated in specific sequences. Remove the right commanders in the right order, and entire sectors of the invasion force would lose coordination. The intelligence reached Major Ben Foster's hidden command center in the Appalachian Mountains through a network of human resistance, cells that had learned to communicate using methods the Calreth could not detect. Foster's staff had developed techniques for sharing information faster than the enemy could intercept and decode their messages, turning human adaptability into a strategic advantage. Sergeant Amy Parker read Brooks's report while crouched in the basement of a destroyed building in downtown Atlanta. Her squad had become experts at turning urban environments into weapons against the occupying forces, but this new intelligence suggested they could do much more than harass patrol units. If Brooks was correct, coordinated strikes against specific targets could cripple entire Calreth formations. Parker's team had learned to move through the city like ghosts, using tunnels, sewers, and building-to-building passages that the aliens never thought to monitor. The Calreth controlled the streets and major buildings, but humans had claimed the hidden spaces between official structures. They had created an invisible network of supply routes and communication lines that existed parallel to the occupied city above. Captain Lucy Stone received her mission orders while preparing for another technology capture operation outside Phoenix. Her strike team had become specialists in acquiring intact Calreth equipment. But their next objective was far more ambitious than anything they had attempted before. Stone's unit was tasked with capturing a living Calreth command ship, complete with its crew and operational systems. The mission required sacrificing 2 entire companies to create a diversion massive enough to draw the target vessel into a vulnerable position. Human forces had learned that successful operations against the Calreth often required accepting casualty rates that would have been considered unacceptable in conventional warfare. But every major victory taught them something that saved lives. In future engagements, Dr. Nina Walsh worked feverishly in her underground medical facility, treating wounded soldiers while simultaneously studying captured Calreth biological samples. Her research had revealed that the aliens' apparent invincibility was largely psychological, rather than physical. Their armor could be penetrated with the right weapons applied at precise angles. Their nervous systems could be disrupted with targeted electrical interference. Most importantly, Walsh had discovered that Calreth psychology was fundamentally different from human thinking. The reptilian species had evolved as solitary hunters who became effective in groups only through rigid hierarchical structures, disrupt their command system, and individual Calreth soldiers became confused and ineffective. They had never learned to fight as independent units the way humans did naturally. Technical Sergeant Chris Lopez had finally cracked the Calreth targeting systems after weeks of studying captured alien technology. His breakthrough came when he realized that the aliens used biological computers that thought in patterns completely different from human electronics. Once he understood their logic systems, Lopez could predict how Calreth weapons would respond to different situations. The captured technology revealed something crucial about alien strategy. The Calreth had conquered 12 worlds using identical tactics because those methods had never failed them before. They were supremely effective at fighting enemies who responded predictably to superior force. But they had no experience dealing with opponents who changed tactics faster than their command structure could analyze and counter new threats. Commander Lucy Stone's assault on the Calreth command vessel succeeded beyond all expectations. Her team fought through the alien ship's defenses with techniques that no military academy had ever taught, improvising solutions to problems they encountered in real time. The operation cost 90% casualties, but the survivors emerged with complete intelligence about Calreth fleet operations throughout the solar system. The captured command ship contained navigation data, communication codes, and tactical assessments that revealed the aliens' plans for the next phase of their invasion. More importantly, it provided human forces with access to the enemy's command network, allowing them to monitor Calreth communications and predict their movements with unprecedented accuracy. Zethkar watched the assault on the command ship with a mixture of fascination and horror from his hidden observation post. The humans had accomplished something that military experts throughout the galaxy would consider impossible. They had not only survived an encounter with superior technology, but had captured it intact for their own use. No species in galactic history had ever learned to fight so effectively while suffering such devastating losses. The alien observer realized that his fundamental understanding of warfare had been challenged by what he was witnessing. The Calreth represented the pinnacle of galactic military evolution, a species that had refined conquest into a precise science. But humans fought according to completely different principles that seemed to contradict everything the galaxy knew about successful military strategy. Captain Alex Turner led the counterattack in Chicago using intelligence gathered from the captured command ship. His Marines moved through the city with newfound confidence, knowing exactly where Calreth patrols would be and how they would respond to different types of attacks. For the first time since the invasion began, human forces had the advantage of superior information about enemy movements. The battles that followed demonstrated a complete reversal in the tactical situation. Calreth units found themselves facing enemies who anticipated their movements, exploited their weaknesses, and adapted to their countermeasures faster than their command structure could respond. Human forces were still technologically inferior, but they had learned to fight a type of war the aliens were not equipped to handle. Dr. Frank Williams coordinated the technical aspects of the counteroffensive from his hidden laboratory in the ruins of MIT. His teams had learned to modify captured Calreth weapons for human use, turning alien technology against its creators. More importantly, they had developed methods for disrupting Calreth electronics that could disable entire formations of enemy troops simultaneously. The breakthrough came when Williams's team successfully interfaced human computers with captured Calreth systems, creating hybrid technologies that combined alien efficiency with human creativity. The resulting weapons were more effective than either species could have developed independently, representing a new type of warfare that neither side had anticipated. Major Foster coordinated the global counteroffensive from his Mountain Command Center, watching as human resistance cells implemented coordinated attacks across every occupied territory simultaneously. The operations required precise timing and flawless communication between units that had never worked together before. But human adaptability made such coordination possible, where alien rigidity would have failed. The Calreth found themselves fighting an enemy that had transformed from helpless victims into effective opponents in a matter of weeks. Worse, the humans were continuing to evolve their tactics with each engagement, learning from every success and failure to become more effective fighters. The reptilian species had never encountered prey that became more dangerous the longer it survived. As reports of human victories began reaching Calreth commanders throughout the solar system, the alien invasion force faced a psychological crisis that their species was not equipped to handle. They had built their entire civilization on the assumption that superior technology and proven tactics would always triumph over inferior opponents. The humans were proving that assumption wrong in ways that challenged the foundation of Calreth society. For the first time in their empire's history, the Calreth were learning what it felt like to be outmatched by an enemy they had initially dismissed as harmless. Colonel Eric Davis stood in the command center of the last operational Calreth flagship, his uniform torn and blood-stained from the final assault that had taken the alien vessel. 3 months after the invasion began, human forces had accomplished something that no species in galactic history had ever achieved. They had not only repelled a Calreth invasion, but had systematically dismantled the enemy fleet and captured most of its command structure intact. The battle for the flagship had cost Davis most of his battalion, but the survivors had fought their way through alien defenses that should have been impregnable. They had used tactics that no military academy taught, improvising solutions to problems they encountered in real time and adapting faster than the Calreth could respond to their innovations. The reptilian crew had surrendered not because they were defeated, but because they could no longer comprehend the type of warfare they were facing. Captain Rebecca Torres coordinated medical treatment for wounded Calreth prisoners in the ship's detention areas, working alongside alien medics who had volunteered to help treat their own injured comrades. The human physician had learned enough about Calreth physiology during the war to provide effective medical care, and she was surprised to discover that the fearsome invaders were capable of gratitude and cooperation once their rigid command structure was removed. The captured aliens revealed something unexpected about their species. Individual Calreth were not inherently aggressive or evil. They were products of a civilization that had evolved around conquest and domination. Without their hierarchical military structure to provide direction, many of them expressed confusion about their purpose and identity. They had never learned to think independently or question the orders they received from superior officers. Dr. Frank Williams examined captured Calreth technology with an eye toward peaceful applications rather than military advantage. The alien science was centuries ahead of human development in many areas, but it was also remarkably specialized for warfare and conquest. The reptilian species had focused their entire technological evolution on becoming more effective predators, neglecting other areas of knowledge that humans considered essential. Williams discovered that Calreth science had stagnated in many important fields because their society discouraged the kind of creative thinking that led to breakthrough innovations. They had perfected existing technologies rather than developing new ones, becoming supremely efficient at tasks they already understood, while remaining unable to adapt to truly novel challenges. Commander Zethkar prepared his final report with appendages that trembled from exhaustion and disbelief. The alien observer had witnessed events that challenged everything the Galactic Council believed about warfare, intelligence, and the nature of civilization itself. His initial assessment of human military capabilities had been completely wrong, but more importantly, his fundamental understanding of what made a species dangerous had been proven inadequate. The humans had demonstrated abilities that transcended conventional measures of military strength. They did not simply fight. They learned. They did not merely survive, they evolved. They had taken every attack as an opportunity to become something better, stronger, and more adaptable than they had been before. Most remarkably, they had transformed their greatest weaknesses into strategic advantages through pure creativity and determination. Major Ben Foster stood on the observation deck of the captured Calreth mothership, looking down at Earth through the alien vessel's biometallic viewports. His resistance network had grown from scattered survivors hiding in ruins to a coordinated force capable of complex operations across multiple continents. The transformation had taken less than 3 months, demonstrating human adaptability on a scale that impressed even their former enemies. Foster's greatest achievement was not military victory, but the integration of captured Calreth personnel into human command structures. The alien soldiers who had volunteered to work with their former enemies provided insights into galactic politics and technology that would prove invaluable in the years ahead. They had chosen cooperation over continued resistance, recognizing that human flexibility offered opportunities their own rigid society never provided. Sergeant Amy Parker led tours of liberated Earth cities for curious Calreth observers who wanted to understand how human society functioned. The reptilian visitors were fascinated by concepts like democratic governance, individual initiative, and technological innovation driven by civilian rather than military needs. Their own civilization had been organized around conquest for so long that they had forgotten other ways of living were possible. Parker discovered that many Calreth were eager to learn about human culture and technology, particularly civilian, applications that their militaristic society had never developed. They were impressed by human art, literature, and scientific research that served no military purpose, but enhanced quality of life. Some requested permission to remain on Earth as students and observers, rather than returning to their home worlds. Captain Lucy Stone worked with former Calreth commanders to establish communication with other alien civilizations throughout the galaxy. The reptilian species had extensive knowledge of galactic politics and could provide introductions to peaceful species who might be interested in establishing trade and diplomatic relationships with humanity. The war had ended with humans gaining not just victory but access to a vast network of interstellar contacts. Dr. Nina Walsh studied Calreth medical technology while training alien healers in human surgical techniques. The exchange of knowledge proved beneficial to both species as each had developed solutions to medical problems that the other had never encountered. Calreth regenerative medicine could help human patients recover from injuries that would normally cause permanent disability, while human psychological therapy offered treatment for trauma that Calreth science could not address. The integration process revealed fundamental differences in how the two species approached problem solving. Humans excelled at creative improvisation and individual initiative, while Calreth were masters of systematic analysis and coordinated group action. Combined properly, these different strengths could produce results that neither species could achieve independently. Technical Sergeant Chris Lopez collaborated with Calreth engineers to develop hybrid technologies that incorporated the best features of both human and alien science. The projects required new approaches to research and development that neither species had used before, combining human creativity with alien technical precision to produce innovations that surprised everyone involved. The captured Calreth fleet became the foundation for Earth's first interstellar navy, with human and alien crews working together to explore nearby star systems and establish contact with other civilizations. The former enemies discovered that they worked well together when their different abilities complemented rather than competed with each other. Zethkar's final report contained conclusions that would revolutionize galactic understanding of intelligence and military capability. Humanity represented a completely new category of species, one that redefined what the galaxy considered possible in terms of adaptability, innovation, and strategic thinking. They had demonstrated that technological superiority was less important than the ability to learn and evolve under pressure. The alien observer recommended immediate diplomatic contact with humanity, not as a junior species requiring guidance, but as potential teachers who could help other civilizations develop new approaches to problem-solving and conflict resolution. The humans had shown that even the most advanced military technology could be defeated by sufficient creativity and determination. As Zethkar's ship departed the solar system carrying representatives from both species to the Galactic Council, he reflected on how completely his understanding of warfare had been transformed. The humans had taught him that the most dangerous enemies were not those with superior weapons, but those with superior minds. They had proven that intelligence was not about processing information efficiently, but about using that information to become something new. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity would not be joining the Galactic Council as students seeking guidance from more advanced civilizations. They would be joining as teachers, ready to share hard-won wisdom about adaptation, innovation, and the power of never giving up. The universe would never be the same.